It in deep for Henrik Sedin. Henrik centers. That was blocked. Daniel gets the puck, feeds it back. Kevin Bieksa fakes the shot. Bieksa wrists one in front. That deflects to the far corner. Burrows hustles after the puck. Works it free to Edler. Now knocked down by a high stick. Deflects back to Bieksa. He shoots. He scores! Kevin Bieksa! 10-18 into overtime. The double overtime goal. And the Canucks, for the third time in their history, will play for the Stanley Cup. The slap shot from Bieksa stuffs the Sharks. Hang that.
Welcome, everybody, to the Puck Drops here, the next iteration of the revisitings. We're revisiting a behemoth of a team, the 2011 Western Conference champion, President's Trophy winner, Vancouver Canucks. And what a team this was, of a team that had been in the playoffs before, but this one had lost in the second round in 6 games to the Blackhawks the past 2 years. And they finally were able to get over that hump and were a win away from the Stanley Cup, and we'll revisit that amazing year and also talk about the rosters. Start some young players: Jonas Anderson, Mario Blisnik, and Alexander Bolduc. And, of course, the stellar play of a good to great playoff player in Alexander Burrows, who became a household name and a legendary scorer there. Guillaume Despines, Tanner Glass, Yannick Hansen, Chris Higgins, Cody Hodgson, some other big, speedy guys that were really put in through to play. Ryan Kessler, who became an elite playoff player. Maxime Lapierre, who was another guy, a former Montreal Canadian traded for in the trade deadline, who really excelled with the Vancouver Canucks. Manny Malhotra, Victor Oshkovich, Joel Perreault, Mason Raymond, who's another big guy that they like there. Rick Rapin, Mikael Samuelsson, second year as a Vancouver Canuck, the former Red Wing, had a lot of playoff experience there at wing, the Swede did. Peter Schaefer, Daniel and Henrik Sedin, who were the leaders of that hockey team and were top-tier guys and really led this squad as far as they were. Sergei Shirokov, Jeff Tambellini, and the big Rafi Torres, who had already played on that 6 Oiler team that was highlighted, and he helped the Vancouver Canucks come even more through. Aaron Volpatti on offense, and on defense, Andrew Alberts, his defenseman that was decent, along with Keith Ballard. Kevin Bieksa, the young star defenseman, who was formulating a spot for himself on the Vancouver roster. Alexander Edler, one of the 2 Vancouver Canucks still on the team that was in that Stanley Cup final. Christian Ehrhoff, big leader on defense. And Dan Hamhuis, the former Nashville Predator, came in and played well on the blue line for the Vancouver Canucks. Evan Oberg and Ryan Perrant, as well as Aaron Rome, big players on defense. And Sami Salo, who is a Finnish defenseman that was a big help, along with Jan Suave, Lee Sweat, and the other players still on the Vancouver Canucks from that team, Chris Tanev, who was a rookie that year. Roberto Luongo, the stellar absolute star in goal for the Vancouver Canucks, and the young backup Corey Schneider. And they were the real leaders in goal for Vancouver there. The Canucks were a 51-win team, only lost 22 times and 9 overtime losses for their first ever President's Trophy championship. And they were the best team in the league. But being the best team, they had to play the 8th seed in the Western Conference, which were the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, for the 3rd straight year, they had to play them and get through to them, or there would be an absolute rehauling and retooling of this Canuck team that couldn't get past Chicago. So Game 1 would start in Rogers Arena. And Game 1, the Chicago Blackhawks would start the rookie Corey Crawford in goal, and Luongo was starting for the Canucks. And it started first period really at a point for the Canucks to score and win. And 7:03 in, Chris Higgins, by a great pass by Kevin Bieksa, and feed by Kessler, made it 1-0 Canucks. Yannick Hansen, 3:25 later, made it 2-0 Canucks, and a wonderful shutout on 32 shots that were faced by Luongo, stopping every single one of them. Vancouver had 33 on Crawford, but Luongo was the true star, and the Canucks went up 1-0 in the best of 7. A more highly contested game appeared in Game 2 in Rogers Arena, with the Canucks trying to get up 2-0. They had 27 shots on Corey Crawford, scoring 4 of them. Chicago shot 26 times on Luongo. They only got to him 3 times. Jannik Hansen scored again for the Blackhawks Canucks first, 7:30 in to make it 1-0. 30 seconds into the second period, after it was 1-0, Daniel Sedin, his first goal of the playoff year, made it 2-0 Vancouver. 14:50 in, the young winger Ben Smith cut the lead in half, 2-1. And then with 14 seconds left in the second period, Alex Edler made the lead 3-1, making Sedin's goal the game winner. Or not the game winner, Then Stolberg, at minute 56 into the third, cut the lead in half to 3-2. Daniel Sedin made it 4-2, 10:06 in the third. That would be the game-winning goal. And 12:50 in, Ben Smith would cut that lead in 2 by passes by Frolik and Kane. But 4-3 the final score, and the Canucks would take a 2-0 series lead. Another 1-goal game in Game 3 in the United Center against the Chicago Blackhawks. This would upcome with 32 whopping shots on Luongo. But again, it would not be enough, because the Vancouver Canucks would find ways to score. With 26 shots on goal, 3 pucks past Crawford, 2 past the goaltender Roberto Luongo. Duncan Keith scored for the first time for the Blackhawks first, 6:54 in, to make it 1-0 defending champs with a power play goal. 10:03 into the second, Christian Ehrhoff tied the game with a power play goal assisted by the Sedin twins. Daniel Sedin scored his third goal of the playoff year, 10:57 in, to give the Canucks a 2-1 lead. And then 12:40 into the second, on a power play goal, Patrick Sharp tied the hockey game. And then 6:48 into the third, the game winner scored by Mikael Samuelsson, a guy who knew the Chicago Blackhawks very well as a Red Wing and Canuck, and made it 3-2 Vancouver, and ended up getting the game-winning goal and putting up the Canucks 3-0 and heading into Game 4 with a chance to sweep. But the Blackhawks made sure to not let that happen. In Game 4, they had 35 shots on goaltender Roberto Luongo, and later, as the game went out of hand, goaltender Corey Schneider. And Vancouver had 23 shots on Crawford, only scoring twice. A minute 43 into the first period, it was Brian Bickle from Dave Bolland and Michael Frolik making it 1-0 Chicago. Sammy Salo scored with a great pass by Alex Edler and Mason Raymond, 4:46 in, to tie the game with a power play goal for the Canucks. Then Brian Campbell, 5:18 in, made it 2-1 Blackhawks in the second. In 17 seconds later, Duncan Keith made it 3-1 Chicago. 14:45 into the second, Dave Bolland made it 4-1 Blackhawks, and Alain Vigneault pulled his goaltender and put in backup Corey Schneider. And with 1:03 left in the second period, a penalty shot was called on a driving Michael Frolik, and so Michael Frolik had the penalty shot from center and ripped it short side on the goaltender Corey Schneider and made it 5-1 Blackhawks. In the third, continued with Chicago, 2:49, a coronation, 6-1 on a power play goal, and then Sharp again, 13:21 into the third, made it 7-1 on a power play goal, Blackhawks. Daniel Sedin, 16:24 in, got a power play goal and was the only other Canuck goal. And the Blackhawks would take 7-2 and go into Rogers Arena back in British Columbia to try to stay alive. And stay alive they did. It would be the first great game by Corey Crawford all playoff year long. 36 shots by the Vancouver Canucks on Crawford. He stopped every single one of them. Chicago had 26 shots on goal on the goaltender Luongo, and they scored all 5 of them. 5:54 into the first, it was Marian Hossa to make it 1-0 Blackhawks. 16:18 into the first, 6:18 in the first, Duncan Keith scored his third goal, making it 2-0. Then Patrick Kane, 12:17 in a power play, made it 3-0 Blackhawks. Then in the second, 126 into the second period, Marian Hossa made it 4-0 Blackhawks. 4:47 into the second, Duncan Keith scored his fourth goal of the playoffs, making it 5-0 Chicago. And Chicago went to Game 6 with a chance still alive, trying to go back 0-3 down as the Philadelphia Flyers did the previous year. And they would find a way to get it done in Game 6. They got 33 shots on goaltender Luongo, scoring 4 of them, including an overtime winner because the game went to 4 periods. Vancouver had 35 shots, besting Chicago with the shot total on the goaltender Corey Crawford and scoring 3 of them. And it was Daniel Sedin early. 2:06 into the first, he made it 1-0. 14:57 into the first, Brian Bickle tied the hockey game. And with 1:12 left in the first period, Burrows made a 2-1 Vancouver lead. 15:08 into the second period by a great play by Patrick Kane. He gave the puck to Dave Bolland, who tied the game. And then with his first goal of the playoffs, 58 seconds into the third period, a blue line blaster by Kevin Bieksa gave the Canucks the lead. But it would be relinquished because Michael Frolik, 2:31 into the third, would tie the game. A great play on Luongo. Ben Smith, 15:30 into the overtime, as the overtime would start, tied 3-3, would get a deflected shot, and by a sprawling butterfly move by Roberto Luongo, he couldn't stop the puck, and so it shifted off a deflected stick over Luongo's head by Ben Smith by a great point shot and screen shot by Nicholas Hjalmarsson, and the Blackhawks would send it back to a Game 7, trying to reverse sweep. And it would go to Rogers Arena for an overtime in one of the most memorable games in Stanley Cup playoff history. The Canucks, going to another overtime game, would get 38 shots on Crawford in a victorious effort. In a losing effort, the Chicago Blackhawks would get 32 shots on Luongo and score once. 2:43 into the first period, Alex Burrows would make it 1-0 Canucks. With a minute 56 into the third period, Taves would score his first goal of the playoffs on a shorthanded goal, tying the hockey game. And then an interesting play as Dan Hamhuis in overtime left a hit on a Chicago player, and Hjalmarsson turned over the puck. Alex Burrows would steal it on a rolling puck that was sliding toward the side of Corey Crawford and lift the puck with a slamming shot under the bar, making it 2-1 Vancouver, ending the Demons of playoff loss to Chicago and sending Vancouver to the second round. There they would face another upset team by the great play of Burrows, and that team would be the Nashville Predators, who won their first playoff series in franchise history against the Anaheim Ducks the previous round. This was another one-goal game and another close one back in Rogers Arena. Vancouver would pepper 30 shots on goaltender Pekka Rinne. Nashville would have 20 shots on goal on the goaltender Roberto Luongo. Luongo was incredible with every puck stopped. And the only goal in the second period, despite the heroics of Pekka Rinne, was a Chris Higgins shot, his second goal of the playoff year, 12-14 in to make it 1-0 Canucks. That ended up being the game winner. It gave Vancouver a 1-0 series lead. There they went back to Rogers Arena with a double overtime game to come. This one would not favor Vancouver so favorably. 33 shots the Canucks had on Pekka Rinne through all 5 periods. Nashville had a whopping 46 shots on Luongo in a victorious effort. In the second period was the first goal, and it was Burrows again. 2 minutes in, he made it 1-0 Vancouver. With a minute and 7 left in the third period, Ryan Suter tied the game for the Nashville Predators. Then it would go to overtime and then double overtime, and the best player of the Nashville Predators' previous playoff series win against Anaheim, Matt Halischuk, would win the hockey game for the Nashville Predators in double overtime, chipping it past the side leg of Roberto Luongo and tying the series, going down to Tennessee in Redstone Arena. There, the Canucks would have a big battle with Vancouver Canucks and the Nashville Predators. Vancouver would have 47 shots in this regulation win against the Nashville Predators, and the Preds would have 30 shots on Luongo. David Legwand, 10-18 into the first, third goal of the playoffs, made it 1-0 Predators on a shorthanded goal. And then a minute into the second, Ryan Kesler would tie the game for the Canucks, his first goal of the playoffs. 3:03 into the third, Chris Higgins made it 2-1 Canucks. And then Joel Ward, 13-18 into the third, would make it a tie game, 2-2. And then 10:45 into the overtime, Ryan Kesler from Samuelson and Ehrhoff would slide through on a power play goal, making it 3-2 in favor of the Canucks. And what a wonderful win it was, and a 2-1 series lead for Vancouver. Game number 4 would ensue now for the Vancouver Canucks. They had a 2-1 series lead, and they were trying to get a 3-1 series lead for Game 5 back in BC. They got 28 shots on the goaltender Rinne, and Nashville had only 21 shots on Vancouver, but they were precise in their goals. Christian Ehrhoff, 15:04 into the first, made it 1-0 Canucks. And then there with 42 seconds, he would tie the game for the Nashville Predators on a power play goal, Ward's 5th of the year. 9:43 into the second, Alex Edler would make it 2-1 Vancouver, And Cody Franzen, 3:27 into the third, would tie the hockey game for the Predators. And 7:28 into the third, another Vancouver lead, 3-2 on a power play goal by Ryan Kesler. What a beautiful goal it was. And then the game would finally be put away, the game winner by Kesler, finally be put away with 21 seconds left. Henrik Sedin sliding an empty netter and giving a 3-1 series lead to the Vancouver Canucks. Now, game number 5 in Rogers Arena, and the Predators would finally be able to beat Vancouver again for the second time in 3 tries. And the Vancouver Canucks did put up 34 shots on Pekka Rinne, scoring 3 of them, but the defense was not up to their previous excellence, with 23 shots only by Nashville, 4 goals being dropped. And it was Legwand again, 3:42 into the first, making it 1-0 Predators shorthanded. 5:59 into the first, Rafi Torres would tie it for the home team. And 15:06 into the first period, Kesler got his 4th goal of the season and his 4th goal against the Nashville Predators. David Legwand, 51 seconds into the second period, would tie the game for the Predators. And then Joel Ward would make it 3-2, 1:14 into the third, and his second goal, 5:45 into the third, with a pass by the rookie Jordan Tutu, would make it 4-2 Predators, and would end up being the game-winning goal as 16-14 in. Kesler would score his 5th goal all series. He was an absolute beast, cutting the deficit to 1, but the Canucks would not come back, and it would go to a 6th game back in Nashville. This one was another 1-goal game, but the Canucks made sure to finish off Nashville and not have a second series go 7. The Predators bested the Canucks heavily in shots on goal with 24-19, but the Canucks did get 2 goals past Pekka Rinne, and the Nashville Predators only got 1 past Roberto Luongo. 7:45 into the first, Mason Raymond made it 1-0 Vancouver. 9:28 into the first, Sedin's 6th goal of the year, Daniel Sedin's that is, made it 2-0 on a power play tally. David Legwand, 3:31 into the second, by passes from Joel Ward and Andre Kostecin, made it 2-1, still in favor of the Canucks, and that would be all she wrote for Nashville. A great year wasted, and the Canucks found a way to get it done and go to the conference final for the first time since 1994. They made the Stanley Cup final that year, and the Canucks trying to do that this year as well. Now, Vancouver went back to Rogers Arena, and they would play the second best team in the Western Conference and the third best team in the National Hockey League in the San Jose Sharks, team that had dispatched the Kings in 6 games and gotten right past the Red Wings in 7. And Vancouver was able to take down new goaltender for the Sharks, Antti Niemi, with 38 shots, and San Jose had 29 shots on Luongo, scoring 2 of them, but the Canucks got the game winner. And first, 18:47 into the first, 1:13 to go, San Jose scored with Joe Thornton's third goal of the playoffs to make it 1-0. But then a new Canuck tied the game at minute 49 into the second. It was Maxime Lapierre. But 8:44 into the second, Patrick Marleau made it 2-1 Sharks on a power play. Then 7:02 into the third, Kevin Bieksa found the tying goal. And 1:21 later, Henrik Sedin's second goal of the playoffs on a power play ended up being the game-winning goal past Niemi right side and gave the Canucks a 1-0 series lead. Vancouver flexed their muscles in game number 2 and got 7 goals down to only 3 that were given up. But again, the Sharks struck first. They scored 13 shots on goal on Luongo. Vancouver getting 38 shots on the goaltender, Antti Niemi. Vancouver had let up a goal first again, 2:28 to the first. It was Logan Couture for the Sharks with passes by Danny Heatley and Colin White. Daniel Sedin got an assist by his brother, 9:39 in, to tie the game in a power play, as well as a pass by Dan Hamhuis. 10:18 into the first, Rafi Torres made it 2-1 Vancouver. 13:03 into the first, San Jose tied the game in a power play by a great goal by Patrick Marleau. In the second period, tied at 2, 12:05 into the second, Bieksa gave the Canucks a 3-2 lead. And then Chris Higgins, 7:56 into the third, made it 4-2 on a power play. 11:41 in, Daniel Sedin made it 5-2. Aaron Rome, 14:30 in, made it 6-2. And 16:42 in, Mason Raymond made it 7-2 Canucks. Ben Eager got a goal 45 seconds later to make it 7-3, but it would not be enough, and the Canucks took 2 at home, going to the HP Pavilion in California to play the Sharks, and this would again be a 1-goal game. The Sharks would take this one, though, heavily outshooting again on the shots on goal. They had 38 shots on Luongo, scoring 4 of them, and Vancouver tallied 30 shots on goal on the goaltender Antti Niemi. 3:56 in for the third straight game. The Sharks struck first, Patrick Marleau, but then they got a follow-up goal by Ryan Clough, 8:22 in, to make it 2-0 San Jose. Marleau got his third of the game, second of the game, 7th of the playoffs, 17:25 in, to make it 3-0 Sharks. Then Alex Burrows, 1:09 into the third period, after a scoreless second, scored the first goal for the Canucks. The deficit was 3-1. And then the eventual game winner, 6:46 in, was scored by Dan Boyle, because afterwards, 13:39 in, Dan Sedin gave it to Dan Hamhuis, and he cut the lead in 2 on a power play. And then Kevin Bieksa got his 4th goal of the playoffs, 16:04 in, making a power play tally, but it would not be enough, and the Sharks took one game in the best of 7. And it went back to a game 4 with the Sharks trying to tie the series, going back to Canada. The Canucks were heavily outshot, 35-13, but miraculously they were able to win the hockey game, and the Sharks only got 2 goals out of their 35 shots, the Canucks getting 4 goals. 9:16 into the second, after a scoreless first. For the first time all series, the Canucks struck first. It was a great goal, 6th of the playoffs, first of the series by Ryan Kessler. Sammy Salo, 10:55 in, made it 2-0 on a power play. Kessler's was also on a power play. For the third power play goal of the entire game, Sammy Salo scored 11:11 into the second to make it 3-0 Vancouver. And that Salo goal ended up being the game winner, the second one. 5:43 into the third, Burrows made it 4-0 from passes by the Twins. Andrew Desharnais, 7:02 into the third, gave the Sharks their first goal of the evening. And 15:55 in, Close's 6th goal of the playoffs, first of the series, made it 4-2. But the Canucks took a 3-1 series lead going back to a memorable game, which would ensue in Rogers Arena for Game 5, and the Canucks trying to go for the first time in 17 years to the Cup final. And in a game that went to 5 periods, their first game that had gone that long since the Nashville series, San Jose had 56 shots on Roberto Luongo, only scoring 2 of them. Vancouver had 34 shots on goal on the goaltender, Antti Niemi. And 8:02 in, Alex Burrows made it 1-0 Canucks. 9:57 into the second, Dan Boyle tied it in a power play goal. And then with 24 seconds into the third, 7th goal of the playoffs, first of the series, Devin Setaguchi, the hero against the Sharks and the Kings, in the first round, made it 2-1. And then with 14 seconds left of the Twins moving it around on Sedin, Henrik, and Daniel Sedin, the puck went off the stick and right to the wheelhouse of Ryan Kessler, who jammed it to the side right past Antti Niemi to tie the game and create more time. It would go to overtime. There would be no goals. In double overtime, be one of the most memorable moments in playoff history and in Canuck playoff history, where the puck would be jammed across the boards and across the wall after Daniel Sedin thought he was pulled down. Then it would go to Alex Burrows, who tried to play along the boards. And as he was trying to go to the point to Sami Salo, it hit the stanchion, did not go out of play, bounced down to the blue line, and with no Shark and no Canuck knowing where it was, except for Kevin Bieksa, he scored his 5th goal of the playoffs, jamming the puck right through the line, and it would bounce past a fluttered and flabbergasted Antti Niemi, making it 3-2 Canucks, winning the game in double overtime, which is why you never quit until the whistle blows, and scoring the goal that sent the Canucks to the Stanley Cup final. They expected to go to the Stanley Cup final, but they were finally able to do it, and this proved everything right for the management, and it won the Western Conference for this team. So Vancouver would have a Game 1 against another team that was trying to create a foundation in the Boston Bruins. And a Canuck team that was really used to scoring a lot of goals had a game where they were outshot again by the Boston Bruins, but won, and it was only a 1-goal game. Boston had 36 shots on the goaltender, Roberto Luongo, and the Vancouver Canucks had 34 shots on the Boston Bruins goaltender, Timmy Thomas. No goals in the first period or second period, but Tim Thomas was absolutely insane, as was Roberto Luongo. But as the puck was moving, with 19 seconds left in the third period, Kessler moved it to Hansen. And as Hansen would play off the boards, he would wait and steer towards the net across for Timmy Thomas to move. And as Thomas moved, he was too aggressive and slid down, and Rafi Torres just waited and slid the puck right under the side, and it was the game-winning goal under the crease to make it 1-0 series lead for the Vancouver Canucks. In Game 2 would appear again. It would be another 1-goal game. And the Canucks would have 33 shots on Thomas this time. The Bruins getting 30 shots on Luongo, and once again, the Vancouver Canucks would score first goal. 12-12 into the first, it was Burrows' first goal of the Stanley Cup final, 8th of the playoff year, making it a power play goal. And then 9 minutes into the second period, Milan Lucic, by passes by Johnny Boychuk and David Krejci, would tie the game for the Boston Bruins. 11:35 into the second, Mark Recchi would make it 2-1 Bruins on a power play goal from the side. And then 9:37 in the third, Dan Sedin can get a great pass and poke it right over the top of Tim Thomas. And then that would be all set for regulation. And in overtime, the minute the puck was dropped, the Boston Bruins were trying to figure out a coverage situation and were befuddled completely. And Alex Burrows raced off a short pass from Daniel Sedin after Edler was getting the puck off the faceoff. And Burrows spun around. Thomas tried to chase him out of the net and poke the puck away and fell down, and Burrows went around. Chara was behind him, couldn't drop him, and with 11 seconds into the overtime, backhanded it across and 11 seconds in, he put the Canucks up 2-0 going to TD Garden, where they were only 2 wins away from winning the Stanley Cup. But in Game 3 in Boston, it was a far different story for the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver in a regulation game got 41 shots on Timmy Thomas, but they only scored once. And the Boston Bruins had 38 shots on Roberto Luongo, who was never pulled, and they scored 8 times. 11 seconds into the second period, where there were no first period goals, including a savage hit by Maxime Lapierre on their forward, Nathan Horton, which galvanized the Bruins. 11 seconds in, Andrew Ference made it 1-0 Boston. Then 4:22 in the second, Recchi was able to pull one low to make it a power play goal and 2-0 Bruins. Brad Marchand lost the puck off Canucks stick, and it was Edler, and then was able to regain the puck. And he took his own pass and went on alone and scored to make it 3-0 shorthanded. David Krejci, 15:47 into the second, made it 4-0 Bruins. Entering the third, they were up 4-0. Danny Paille, 11:38 into the third on a shorthanded goal, made it 5-0 Boston. Yannick Hansen, 13:53 into the third, finally scored for the Canucks, but it would not be enough. Recchi, second of the game, 17:39 in, made it 6-1 Bruins. Chris Kelly deflected 18:06 into the third, made it 7-1. And with 31 seconds left, Michael Ryder steamed one on a power play that got ripped in on the power play goal, which made it 8-1 Bruins and put Boston firmly back and securely back into the series. And another absolutely perfect game for Timmy Thomas would ensue the next one. Vancouver again overwhelmed the Boston Bruins on shots on goal, 38-29. Rick Peverley, 11:59 to the first, made it 1-0 Bruins because there was a chance for him and he broke on a breakaway, just top shelving it. Michael Ryder, 11:11 in, continued his hot streak, 7th goal of the playoffs, ripping one from the point to make it 2-0. Marchand from Bergeron, 13:29 into the second. Brad Marchand made it 3-0 Bruins, and Rick Peverley got his second goal of the game, 3:39 into the third frame, making it 4-0. And the stellar play for Thomas continued, and just issues for Luongo all around. But it would be solved in Game 5 with the series tied. The Canucks knew they needed some type of spark to avoid a 4-game sweep after taking the first 2. And Boston would overtake Vancouver on shots on goal, but they could not solve the brilliance of Roberto Luongo. They had 31, and the Vancouver Canucks had 25. Still had to solve some of the defensive lapses, but as a first and second period, they were able to solve the Bruins offense because 4:35 in, Max Lapierre would score his second goal of the playoffs, poking a puck past Timmy Thomas, 4:35 in, making it 1-0. It gave a 3-2 series lead for the Canucks, and they would head back to TD Garden for game number 6. Boston had 40 shots, a wonderful 40 shots on Vancouver, and Vancouver had 38 shots on the Boston Bruins. But again, with the shots on goal, we're not able to really head through because Tim Thomas was at an absolute other level, and the passes on the power play weren't working. 5:31 into the first period, Brad Marchand on our left side was able to whip one past the sideboard off of Mark Recchi when he batted it out on the top of Roberto Luongo. Milan Lucic, 6:06 into the first period, made it 2-0 Boston Bruins off another deflected play. And then 8:35 into the first period on a power play, Ference slapped one across Roberto Luongo, and for the first time since game number 4 against the Chicago Blackhawks, Luongo was pulled. He was chased out of the building, and they put Corey Schneider in. And immediately, the Bruins went on a power play off of a high stick by Yannick Hansen. and Michael Caberlet gave the puck to Ryder. He ripped one top shelf 9:45 into the first to make it 4-0 off the post for the Boston Bruins, and it seemed to cave around the Canucks. 22 seconds into the third, though, up 4-0, the Canucks were finally able to get into the game 4-1 on a power play. But 6:59 into the third, Krejci made it 5-1 on a power play for the Bruins. And 17:34 into the third, Maxime Lapierre made it 5-2. I've always felt this game was a turning point because the Canucks weren't thinking, we can win the Stanley Cup today, let's get it done, boys. They kind of felt, in my opinion, just my personal opinion, that they were trying to get that win, just try to beat the crowd, beat the Bruins, and they weren't thinking of that not just to beat them, but to find a way to reverse history. Usually you don't want to think of that, but I think that might have helped them. And they got to Game 7, and Game 7 is an epiphany for the Boston Bruins. I still can't figure out how the Canucks lost this. They just didn't figure out how to beat Timmy Thomas. They didn't have a real explanation why, and they thought the crowd would just get them in it. But a full throttle game was what they needed, and they weren't able to do so. They again outshot the Boston Bruins, but goaltending becoming an issue because Luongo faced 21 shots, letting 4 in, and the Canucks had 37 shots. And again, they couldn't get anything past Timmy Thomas, his second shutout of the series. 14:37 into the first, it was Bergeron, his 5th goal of the year, making it 1-0 Bruins. 12:13 into the second, Marchand made it 2-0 Boston. 17:35 into the second, Patrice Bergeron on a shorty pulled it past Luongo, made it 3-0 Bruins. And 17:16 into the third, Marchand iced it off on an empty netter to make it 4-0 Boston. And it just seemed to be, what happened if you were Vancouver? What happened? And they haven't been past the first round since. It's a mirage. It doesn't make sense, but that's just the way sports are sometimes. And hopefully this team will get back and be great. But you have to remember how good that Vancouver team was and that they just didn't win it. And everything, all kudos to the Bruins. They really deserved it. But you really start to think on how that team wasn't able to finish it and win it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Next one we'll be doing is going to be one of my other personal favorites. A magical season for me, the 2011-12 New Jersey Devils. We'll be talking about them. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Happy hockey and have a good afternoon.